Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today we're going to talk about Star Wars Battlefront Fighter Squadron game mode. Who hasn't wanted to fly the Millennium Falcon, the Slave One, an X-Wing, a TIE Fighter, TIE Interceptor, A-Wing? You can do all of that in Fighter Squadron game mode, and it looks beautiful. These graphics are actually on the Xbox. I prefer playing the game mode on the Xbox because I think the control scheme works really well. And in fact, when this launches on PC, I'm thinking about just plugging in an Xbox controller and using that instead of mouse and keyboard. Okay, so here's how the game mode works. You spawn in as either Rebels or Imperials. There's 20 actual players and 20 bots on each team. So effectively, 40 total players in one game mode are possible, plus another 40 bots. So the sky is constantly full of enemy fighters. Now, if you kill a bot fighter, they are worth 1 point. You can see the little scoreboard ticking up at the top of the screen. The first team to get to 200 points wins. If you kill a fighter that is actually piloted by a real player, that's worth 3 points. Now, during the 10-minute time limit of the round, I believe 4 different transport ships spawn in, 2 for each side. Now, if your team kills the enemy team's transport ship before it makes it into orbit, you get an extra 20 points, and you also get a ton of points for doing damage to the transport ship, so it does make a lot of sense to go for it. You also get quite a few points for attacking the enemy hero ships, the Millennium Falcon and the Slave One. And here I am flying the Falcon. This thing is a beast. It's a tank. Both hero ships can take an absolute beating, and especially if you're a decent pilot and you know how to dodge missiles and activate your armor and abilities at the right time to avoid taking damage, you can keep them alive almost indefinitely. In fact, most of the times when I got the hero ships, I just kept them alive until the actual round ended, because that's how powerful they are. The Millennium Falcon has a shield ability, which you can use to mitigate all incoming damage for a period of time. Then it has a lock-on missile, and it also has a speed boost, not to mention its lock-on cannons are pretty darn effective as well. Now, if you're not really familiar with the basics of how to dodge and activate your abilities at the right time, there is a simple little training mission on Tatooine that you can access via the menu, and that should familiarize you with the basics of just piloting your fighter around. But there is a little bit of skill in this game. I'm not going to say it's the most skill-intensive dogfighting mode ever, since auto-locking is such a big part of it. It's not like playing War Thunder or anything like that. But it is something where an average player can get into it right away and actually start having fun. Now, if you're willing to fly towards the ground of the map, you will find the power-ups, and that's how you get the hero ships. You have to find those hero power-ups. But there's also other power-ups that you can get for your basic fighters. There's one that will restore your health, and then there's another one that will refresh your abilities. Like if you're playing for the Rebels, a refresh will allow you to proc your armor, which mitigates all incoming damage, and then once that runs out, you can proc it again, so you can stay invulnerable for quite a bit of time. The power-ups are kind of worth going for. Honestly, the amount of time it takes to go down and grab a power-up, you can probably kill like 3 AI and maybe even get in a dogfight with 1 normal player. It always takes longer to kill the normal players than it does the AI, because they have more health, I believe, and they also technically should be more maneuverable. Now, as far as I can tell, AI will only play TIE Fighters or X-Wings. I don't think I've seen any AI in A-Wings or TIE Interceptors. When you lock onto an enemy fighter and there's a name tag over them, that means that's an actual player, and if there isn't one, then they're just an AI. You always have the option to switch to first-person mode, which looks awesome in the Slave One, but unfortunately doesn't really give you a huge advantage. Maybe with the hero ships, since their ships are so huge it can obstruct your vision sometimes, but other than that, I gotta say playing from third-person mode is really the way to go if you actually want a tactical advantage, and the only real reason to play from first-person is just for an aesthetic appeal. I hope that at some point they add an expert playlist to this game, or a hardcore playlist, where you can't switch out of first-person view, both for Fighter Squadron and for the infantry combat. I think that would appeal to a lot of players who like to play from first-person and don't want to get outplayed by people using the third-person camera. Alright, let's talk about the Slave One's abilities. Ultimately, I think you're going to be able to do incredibly well whether you're using the Slave One or the Millennium Falcon. However, the Falcon does have an exploitive way to kill the Slave One in 1 hit, which I don't really want to mention here, but I also feel like it's not going to get fixed unless nobody mentions it, and that's where if you proc the armor on the Falcon and then use your speed boost, you can basically catch up to the Slave One and ram it, which normally would get both of you killed, but if your armor is active, you absorb all that damage and you can just ram and kill the Slave One. It's total bullshit, and I feel like a lot of people are going to exploit it, especially now that I mentioned it, but hopefully DICE will patch this extremely fast, because it is a really, really big problem if there's 2 hero ships on the field. Now let's talk about the Slave 1's abilities. It has 2 lockable missiles, which are awesome. They're slightly different. I'm actually not sure what the complete difference is between them. I'm sure a lot more testing will show like how they function differently. Maybe they have different tracking rates, maybe they have different damage versus tracking rates. I'm not really sure, but the point is it's got 2 missiles, and I've killed ships using both of them, and they're pretty awesome. Defensively, it's got a sensor jammer. Just like the snow speeder, once this is activated, it will block any incoming locks. So if somebody's already shot a missile at you that's locked on, you can activate this and the missile will miss. It also prevents people from locking onto you with their normal blaster. So the auto targeting that your ships can do with the blasters will no longer work while this is active. You can still manually zero in your blasters and hit the Slave 1 while this is active, and I was doing that a little bit, but you're just not going to land as many shots. So in a way, it's sort of like having a shield ability, although it doesn't literally mitigate all incoming damage. It just makes it very hard for that incoming damage to actually hit you. Now, when choosing between the 2 ships, it's really hard for me to say which one I like best. Honestly, I think I like them equally. The abilities of the Falcon might be better, even though there's 2 lock-on missiles for the Slave 1. Your normal blasters kill ships so fast that I almost just didn't find time to use both of the lock-on missiles. So honestly, having that speed boost of the Falcon could be a little bit more useful. Getting over to transports to either destroy them or protect them gives you a little bit more use. And the shield that absorbs all incoming damage, I think, is slightly better than the sensor jammer. Although the sensor jammer might last longer, I didn't actually time it out and test it. But ultimately, I think the 2 ships are fairly equal-footed. There isn't one that's just going to absolutely wreck the other, unless we're talking, of course, about that stupid exploit, but hopefully that will get fixed soon. Now, how about the actual fighters? The A-Wing is definitely one of the best ones out there. Everybody seems to say that it is the ultimate fighter right now, and I have a hard time disagreeing with that, because it's incredibly hard to hit when you're playing as the Imperials. A-Wings are always a pain in the ass to take down. They're small targets, they're incredibly agile. They also seem to have no problem taking out enemy fighters, although I think the X-Wing might have more firepower than the A-Wing. Now, the Rebel ships also have the shield ability to mitigate all incoming damage, and the Imperial ships have the speed boost ability instead. I think the shield ability far outweighs the speed boost ability. It just allows you to absorb more damage. Whether or not this gives the Rebels a huge advantage over the Imperials, I'm not really sure yet. I'm sure the devs have done a lot of balancing and testing to make sure that one team is not just universally better than the other team, but only time will tell if this ability really is going to make a huge difference in the long run. When I played, it seemed like the Rebels were winning most of the time. Now, based on the abilities of the ships, it does seem like they're trying to design Rebels around turn and burn fighting, and the Imperials around boom and zoom. If you're not familiar with this, turn and burn are generally fighters designed around having better agility, but not necessarily speed, so they can turn quickly and win in slow-paced dogfights. And then boom and zoom is a strategy where you have a lot of speed, but not necessarily agility, so you can speed in very quickly, do your damage, and then speed out very quickly. And I think that's what the boost ability is meant for on the Imperial fighters. However, the game mode doesn't necessarily reflect that kind of strategy for the most part. I think people just want to kind of get in close, get on somebody's tail, and just waste them with damage. I haven't used the speed boost ability too effectively on the Imperials yet, but who knows? I haven't played it enough yet, so I might get more use out of it. Ultimately, though, the game mode is actually a lot of fun. I don't know how long it's going to keep me interested, because it doesn't seem like the skill gap is too insanely high here. It definitely is more of a casual, friendly game mode, and I think the hero ships might have a little bit too much health, to the point where if you get a hero ship early on in the round, you can probably keep it alive most of the game and just kill everybody and get top of the scoreboard. So it's sort of like the power-up is really like winning the game or winning the scoreboard. So maybe half the health of the hero ships. I don't know. I know this is something that the developers played around with a lot, trying to get the health of the hero ships right. Ultimately, though, it's a blast to play. The visuals are amazing. You can't play over Endor, which is disappointing, but I understand that would be really hard to render out the entire force just so you can have a fighter battle over it. So that makes sense from a technological standpoint. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing up.